You've heard of Alexander the Great. You've heard of Julius Caesar. You've heard of Hannibal. Your history textbooks told you these men were the greatest military commanders who ever lived. But in 3rd century BC China, there was a man who killed more enemy soldiers than all three of them combined. His name was Bai Qi. In 5,000 years of Chinese history, only one person ever earned this title, the God of Slaughter. And here's the thing that makes his story so hard to look away from. This man did not want to fight. Welcome. Today we go back 2,300 years to the 3rd century BC, when China was not yet China. It was 7 nations, 7 kingdoms that hated each other, that had been tearing each other apart for 250 years, with no end in sight. Picture modern Europe, but strip away every international law, every United Nations resolution, every diplomatic agreement. Imagine Germany, France, England, Spain, and Italy all sending armies at each other. Today's ally is tomorrow's enemy. And everyone knows that in the end, only one nation can survive. That was China during the Warring States period. 7 kingdoms, Qin, Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhao, and Wei, fighting over the same land for over 2 centuries. Historians estimate China's total population at the time was somewhere between 20 and 30 million people. In a world that small, war was as natural as breathing. Every year, people died. Every year, families were destroyed. Bai Qi was born into that world. His exact birth year is unknown, probably around 330 BC. He came from Mei County in the state of Qin, roughly where Shanxi province's Mei County sit today. His family background is barely mentioned in historical records, but one thing is clear. He was not from a noble family. No connections, no one to pave the way for him. But Bai Qi was born in the right country at the right time. About 50 years before he was born, the states of Qin went through a transformation that changed its entire destiny. The reforms of Xiangyang. The most important piece of those reforms, especially for a young man with nothing, was the military merit system. The logic was simple and completely radical for its time. Your background does not matter. Your father does not matter. Kill one enemy soldier on the battlefield, and you move up 1 rank. You get land. You get a house. The more you contribute, the higher you rise. In other 6 kingdoms, a nobleman's son was always a nobleman, and a commoner's son was almost always a commoner. But in Qin, a farmer's son, if he was talented enough and tough enough, could fight his way all the way up to general. Bai Qi started at the very bottom as an ordinary foot soldier and climbed from there. Historical records are nearly silent about those early years. But one detail survives, and it tells us something important. From a young age, Bai Qi had studied military strategy deeply. In the chaos of the battlefield, when others panicked, he could read the situation clearly. He stayed calm. He knew which direction to move. That kind of mind, in that kind of world, is impossible to hide. Someone noticed. His name was Wei Ran, Prime Minister of Qin, brother of the Queen Dowager, and one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. Wei Ran saw something in this obscure low-ranking officer and introduced him to King Zhao of Qin. That was the first turning point of Bai Qi's life. A nobody, recommended by someone who believed in him, stepping into the light of history for the first time. But before we talk about his battles, we need to talk about something that surprises almost everyone who learns about Bai Qi. He didn't believe in war. After years of watching men die on the battlefield, often for no good reason. He arrived at a belief that was almost unheard of for a military commander of his era. War is the most expensive option. It should be the last option. Historical records show him telling the king more than once. War is a terrible instrument. Capturing a city often costs more than you gain. These are the words of a man who would eventually be called the god of slaughter. His philosophy, put simply, was this: if you absolutely must fight, then fight in a way that leaves your enemy permanently unable to come back. Not for the sake of killing, but for the sake of ending the killing. A war that doesn't truly solve the problem is just planting the seed for the next war. He also had a habit that puzzled people around him. Before launching a campaign, he would carefully assess whether the timing was right, and he would frequently advise the king not to attack when conditions weren't favorable. A reluctant warrior, who was also the most effective warrior who ever lived. In 294 BC, Bai Qi appeared in the historic record for the first time as a commanding general, leading Qin forces against the Han state. But the battle that made the entire warring states world go silent came the following year. It was called the Battle of Yique. The combined armies of Han and Wei totaled 240,000 soldiers. Qin's forces were less than half the number. But Bai Qi had seen something that the enemy commanders missed. Han and Wei did not trust each other. Neither side wanted to take the heavy casualties up front. Their joint command was fractured from the inside. So by keeping the Han forces down, with a small holding force, then threw the full weight of his army at Wei. He shattered Wei so fast that Han had no time to respond. Once Wei collapsed, Han collapsed immediately after. 240,000 enemy soldiers killed. When that number reached the royal courts of the other kingdoms, every room went quiet. From that moment on, the name Bai Qi carried a different kind of weight. Over the next 20 years, he kept fighting. He attacked Chu, captured the Chu capital of Yang, and forced the Chu king to abandon his own city and flee. He fought against Zhao, Wei, and Han. He won every single engagement, almost always outnumbered. Across 40 years of military campaigns, Bai Qi never lost a battle. Not once. Historians estimate that over the course of his career, he eliminated more than 1 million enemy soldiers. In a world with a total population of 20 to 30 million people, that is somewhere between 3 and 5% of everyone alive in China at the time. The modern Chinese historian Liang Qichao once calculated that across the entire 250-year warring states period, the total death toll from all battles combined was approximately 2 million people. Bai Qi alone accounted for half of that number. In 260 BC, Qin and Zhao finally met for the decisive confrontation. It would become the most famous battle in Chinese history, the Battle of Changping. The Zhao commander, Lian Po, was a seasoned general. He chose not to fight Qin directly. Instead, he fortified his position and let the terrain do the work, grinding down the Qin army through attrition. The two sides stared at each other for nearly 3 years. Qin could not break through, so Qin tried something different. They spread a rumor inside Zhao that what Qin truly feared was not Lian Po, but a young commander named Zhao Kuo. Zhao Kuo was the son of a famous general. He had studied military texts his entire life and could talk about tactics with stunning fluency. He had just never actually commanded a real battle. His own mother saw through it. When she heard her son had been appointed commander, she went straight to the king and said, "My husband told me on his deathbed that Zhao only knows how to talk about war on paper. Please do not give him an army." The king didn't listen. Meanwhile, Qin quietly replaced their own frontline commander with Bai Qi and kept it a complete secret. Zhao had no idea who he was about to face. Zhao took command and immediately ordered the entire army to advance and attack. Bai Qi had been waiting for exactly that moment. He sent 25,000 soldiers on a flanking mission to cut off the Zhao army's retreat. He sent 5,000 cavalry to wedge themselves between the Zhao main force and their supply base, splitting the army in two. He sealed the trap shut and cut off all food supplies. 450,000 Zhao soldiers were surrounded at Changping. They held out for 46 days without food. First, they slaughtered their horses. When the horses were gone, soldiers began killing each other. At the end, there were reports of men eating men. Zhao tried to break out of the encirclement and was killed by a volley of arrows. The survivors put down their weapons, and then Bai Qi faced the heaviest moment of his life. 450,000 prisoners stood in front of him. There is a detail in the historical records that most people don't know. What Bai Qi wanted in that moment was for King Zhao to issue the order himself. If the king commanded the execution, Bai Qi could carry it out, while the king shared the burden of what came next. He waited for royal instructions. What came back was the king telling him to handle it himself. No royal command, his decision alone. Qin's own supplies had been exhausted after years of siege. There was no way to feed 450,000 prisoners, and releasing them meant that within a few years, those same men would be soldiers again, fighting Qin again. Bai Qi gave the order. 240 young soldiers were released to go home and deliver the news. Everyone else buried alive. That was 260 BC in the Warring States era. There was no Geneva Convention. There were no prisoner of war camps. There was no external moral framework telling you what the right answer was. There was only a war that had been going on for hundreds of years. A general who had to make a decision alone, and 450,000 men who had laid down their arms. Was it the right decision? I don't know. I think Bai Qi didn't know either. But he carried it for the rest of his life. After Changping, Bai Qi urged the king to keep pushing, to finish Zhao while it was broken. Prime Minister Fan Zhu intervened and persuaded the king to pull back. Historians still debate Fan Zhu's true motives. Some say it was genuine strategic caution. Others say it was jealousy of Bai Qi's growing reputation. The king listened to Fan Zhu. The army withdrew. A few years later, Qin attacked Zhao again. It went badly. The king sent word asking Bai Qi to take command. Bai Qi declined. The timing was wrong, he said. The king asked again. Bai Qi refused again. The king's patience ran out. He stripped Bai Qi of his rank, reduced him to a common soldier, and expelled him from the capital, Xianyang. Bai Qi packed his belongings and walked out through the city gates. He had gone 10 miles when a royal messenger caught up with him. The messenger was not carrying a recall order. Fan Zhu had gone to the king and said, Bai Qi has been showing resentment since his demotion. He's been saying things he shouldn't. A man like that is dangerous to keep alive. The messenger was carrying a sword. Bai Qi took the sword. He stood in the winter wind outside Xianyang and was silent for a long time. Then he said, What crime have I committed against heaven, that it has come to this? What did I do wrong to end up here? He paused. Then he answered his own question. I know what I did. At Changping, hundreds of thousands of Zhao soldiers surrendered. I deceived them into laying down their weapons, and then I had them all buried alive. That alone is enough to deserve death. He raised the sword, and he was gone. 257 BC. 36 years after Bai Qi died, Qin completed what it had been working toward for generations. The state of Qin unified all of China under one rule for the first time in history. Without Bai Qi's devastating blow to Zhao at Changping, that unification would not have come as quickly as it did. It might not have happened at all. In a very deep sense, the reason China today is a single unified nation, rather than a patchwork of dozens of separate states, the way Europe ended up, Bai Qi is one of the earliest people responsible for that. He never chose war. What he chose was to walk into an era where war was the only road forward, and then he followed that road all the way to its end. He was the most brutal product of his time, and the most profound tragedy of his time. A man who did not want to fight, who spent his entire life killing, in exchange for a peace he would never live to see. 5,000 years of Chinese history. Only one person ever earned the title, the God of Slaughter, Bai Qi.